para pasarle.
So I grew up in Colorado. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My parents have been entrepreneurs. It's interesting data, at least in the United States, that talks about how most people whose parents are entrepreneurs oftentimes try out an entrepreneurial endeavor or project at some point in their life. It's this idea that entrepreneurship can be trained. That's very much true here at Team Labs, is that entrepreneurship is a skill that is not just, we have this idea in our minds that entrepreneurs, the very best entrepreneurs are people who are just super crazy and really weird and very ambitious and out there, but I think the reality is that entrepreneurship is something that can be taught and can be trained, and it's really cool to understand and learn more about the ways that Team Labs is doing that. So, I'll give a bit of background about Uncharted, and then we can dive in and talk a bit more. So, Uncharted has been an entrepreneurial incubator, accelerator program for the last 9 years. We started in 2009, and our mission was to accelerate entrepreneurs that are working to tackle social and environmental issues with their business. And over those 9 years, our mission has evolved from simply just being an entrepreneurial accelerator program to really looking at ourselves as a 21st century problem-solving organization. And that shift has taken place in the last few years as we've said, what does it look like to take the power of entrepreneurship and use that to tackle the biggest problems that our society faces? And that you may see, and we see all the time, there's so much innovation. You may see, and we see all the time, there's so much innovation happening in the world. So much entrepreneurship happening in the world. But oftentimes this innovation and entrepreneurship is not actually leading to human progress. And sometimes it's tempting to think that innovation equals human progress. And the reality, at least in my experience, is that we can be very, very innovative, but that does not translate automatically over into human progress, into actual problem solving. So for us as an organization, really, we ask ourselves the question, we're doing all this work in entrepreneurship, we're doing all this work in innovation, but is it actually leading to improving people's lives? And as a result, we begin to change our model and think about ourselves as a 21st century problem-solving organization. Thank you. Okay, you got it. Okay, cool, thank you. As I mentioned, we've worked all over the world in the last 9 years, and so we have built out, we've run accelerator programs at home in the United States. And what we did is we built out an accelerator in a box, essentially a playbook that we then licensed out to all over the world. And one of the teams that we partner with is Team Labs here. So we've licensed it out to 40 countries around the world. Countries that are working to support social entrepreneurship in their home context. And so we have a global reach. We've worked with over 600 entrepreneurs in the last 10 years. And our entrepreneurs, our portfolio, we look at the bottom metrics are important metrics to us. So we want to see that entrepreneurs that come through our program are able within 2 years to rapidly increase the amount of funding that they take on in capital and the amount of revenue that they generate as an organization. So for us as an accelerator program, we're really trying to see, are we able to provide a direction-shifting influence for entrepreneurs? And so we are evaluating our success based on a few key metrics that determine how effective we are as an organization. One of the key reasons why entrepreneurs come to Uncharted is because they want access to international investors. They want to take on investment from impact investors, from foundations, from venture capital, from angels. So our job is to mobilize investors in the direction of entrepreneurs and to support those entrepreneurs with investment. So we really asked ourselves this question, and when we talk to entrepreneurs, we oftentimes ask them the question, what are you actually in the business of doing? What is actually your business? And for an organization like Uncharted, we actually didn't have a great answer to this question. Were we in the business of just growing companies? Were we in the business of just helping entrepreneurs go from small to big? Is that what we cared about? Were we in the business of building ecosystems? Or maybe of creating innovation? And for us, what it came down to was we were in the business of tackling problems. We wanted to address the biggest social and environmental issues that our country is encountering and facing, and there are many in the US, and say we want to be problem focused. And that was what really drove us as an organization to shift our model from just growing companies to actually tackling social and environmental issues. So the way that our model works is that we think of ourselves at this intersection between a foundation that cares about specific social issues and an accelerator that cares about how we grow companies. And that's where Uncharted is positioned, is at this intersection of the problem focus of a foundation with the DNA of an accelerator program. So for example, this past year, we took on an initiative of urban poverty in the United States and said, okay, urban poverty is happening across major cities in the US. How do we find what are the factors that are contributing to urban poverty? And use that as the selection criteria, those factors as the selection criteria that helps us select the very best entrepreneurs we can find. And then we accelerate a cohort of 10 entrepreneurs over the course of 1 year that are all working in urban poverty. We did the same thing with early childhood education and said, it's crazy that there are a significant number of kids who enter kindergarten that are not kindergarten ready in terms of reading, in terms of their proficiency to begin their education process. So how do we find entrepreneurial ventures that are working to help kids become kindergarten ready? We're working on a project right now on what does the future of food look like? And we think all about sustainable agriculture, to ethical supply chains, to substitutes for protein, to food waste. How do we think about the future of food? Each of these problems, we identify a problem, we then go out and find the very best entrepreneurs that are tackling that problem from different sides. So when it comes to urban poverty, we're looking for entrepreneurs that are working on affordable housing, on job creation, on education, all the different factors that contribute to urban poverty. And so we have, right now, it's interesting being here at Team Labs, talking about hypotheses and creating a learning environment. We have 2 hypotheses at Uncharted that really power our work. 2 educated guesses that are helping us think about how to create impact in the world. And the first one is that accelerating ventures vertically, meaning going from small to big, that are tackling the same problem but from different angles, will lead to more measurable progress than just supporting companies that are working in disparate industries, that are not addressing the same problem. And if we can have multiple entrepreneurs, multiple mentors, multiple funders concentrating on the same issue together, we think we can see more progress against that issue than if we were doing it with a diversity of social entrepreneurs, addressing a diversity of issues and a diversity of geographies. So this is hypothesis number 1, and we're currently testing this hypothesis with the programs that we run. Like you all here, like Team Labs, we're a learning organization. I'll talk more about learning in a little bit, but learning is a competitive advantage for us. We're not necessarily the ones that have the most experience. We don't have 30 years of experience addressing urban poverty. But we can learn quite rapidly, and through that rapid learning we can begin to understand what are the key factors and drivers that address these social issues. So that's the first hypothesis. So as I mentioned, we worked in urban poverty, we worked in early childhood, we worked in food insecurity. How do we increase the access of healthy foods into low-income neighborhoods? These are 3 year-long initiatives that we've been working on in the last year. Each of these, we have around 10 companies that are addressing each of these issues. So that's the first hypothesis. The second hypothesis is, in addition to growing companies vertically, bringing companies together to work together on an issue horizontally can lead to interesting types of impact. So as an accelerator, we really focused on how to grow companies up. And now we've begun to experiment with how do we bring companies together where they can actually collaborate to solve a problem in one place. This is the second hypothesis that's driving our work at the moment. So this past year, it's actually 2018, maybe a year wrong, we're helping to take 3 to 5 organizations, it's actually 5 organizations. We're helping them move into one neighborhood in Denver together and work on addressing food insecurity just in one neighborhood. This idea that how do we connect stitching together 4 to 5 companies so they can all work on one problem in a coordinated way. We're doing the same thing with the future of employment this year. We're taking 15 organizations, helping to create the connective tissue, the glue that combines them together so that they can collectively support job creation in Colorado. So the second hypothesis is on the horizontal plane. How do we bring companies together to solve an issue? So as an organization, we are beginning to experiment with these 2 hypotheses. There's that quote by Albert Einstein that says something like, the same level of thinking that created the problems cannot be used to solve those problems. In the US right now, we're encountering tremendous issues, and so what we're trying to do is figure out new approaches to problem solving, experimenting with unproven approaches and see how do we try new methods and new models and see if they work. So we've worked with 600 entrepreneurs from all over the world. We've seen a couple of traps and a couple of opportunities that entrepreneurs sometimes will fall into. And I want to just kind of end with this, and we can open up and talk a little bit about startups and about how to scale and grow impactful businesses. So a few principles that come to mind in my experience of working with lots of entrepreneurs. And what's interesting is that we also are kind of building this as we are flying it. So we ourselves as an organization are entrepreneurs trying to figure out how this all works. So these are principles for me as well, as I remind myself, okay, as an entrepreneur, how do we continue to take the next courageous step? And I think one of the big ones is, as an entrepreneur, we are always asked, what is the next courageous step you need to take as a leader in your organization? What is that next courageous step? Whether it's scale, whether it's growth, whether it's having a hard conversation with your co-founder. Entrepreneurship for me has been very much about an investigation of courage and about saying, okay, how do I focus on the next courageous step? So Scott Belsky, a successful entrepreneur who's based out of Silicon Valley, says the only sustainable competitive advantage in business is self-awareness. Which is challenging for me because competitive advantages come and go. But an entrepreneur's ability to be self-aware, and related to self-awareness is learning. An entrepreneur's ability to consistently and rapidly learn is their only competitive advantage. I think this is true. And the entrepreneurs that we select for our cohorts, we usually get around 300 to 400 applications depending on the issue that we're addressing. We'll select 10 companies out of those 300 applications, and the selection criteria comes down to learning and self-awareness. Those are the 2 principles that we look for more than anything else when it comes to selecting great entrepreneurs. Is are entrepreneurs self-aware enough to understand their blind spots, to be able to see what they might be missing, to be able to get coached from their team, to have hard conversations with co-founders to really understand where are they, what are their greatest risks, what are the biggest opportunities. So self-awareness is a competitive advantage. This other one is this question of what is the 20% of your work that is 80% most valuable? This is a big question that we challenge our entrepreneurs in thinking. A big question I challenge our team every month when we talk about strategic priorities for our organization is that entrepreneurs don't have much time. We don't have many resources. So we need to find those creative hacks, those ways to address the odds that we have to be more successful. So how do we operate as entrepreneurs at leverage points? What are the leverage points that you're operating at in your business? If you track your time, What is the 20% of your time that's 80% most valuable for moving your venture forward? So as a leader, one of the things that I focus on a lot within our organizations, I track my hours and try to understand how I'm allocating and spending my time on a daily and weekly and monthly basis. Then at the end of each month, I'll go back and analyze the hours and say, what were the hours that were most valuable for advancing the mission of our organization? What were the hours that perhaps aren't so valuable? So what is the 20% of your work that's 80% most valuable? Entrepreneurs that operate at that leverage point of the most successful entrepreneurs that we have found. And this final question is one around, in this space, maybe you feel it too, there's so much innovation happening. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs that come to us and say they are the most innovative X, Y, and Z. They're innovating on this, on this, on this. But oftentimes I think as a culture of entrepreneurship, we are way too seduced by innovation. It's too sexy. It's too exciting to see something that's brand new. And we talk about social innovation. We talk about disruption. Entrepreneurship are the new heroes. But we want to see innovation for the purpose of what? Sometimes the impact that's most valuable isn't necessarily innovative. And sometimes the most courageous thinking is thinking that's taking something that's been working for a long time and just doing it more and doing it better. And so one of the challenges is that in a space, in a world that innovation is celebrated, sometimes innovation is not the best course of action. Sometimes disruption is not the best way to go about doing something. And this gets back to this idea of 20% versus 80%. And so we really, when we look at a portfolio, in some conversations, we'll say, yes, we want to be very innovative, but it needs to be in service of something. Why are you innovating? What is the purpose of your innovation? Why are you deviating from what is considered the status quo? If you have good answers to those questions, innovation makes sense. If you're innovating just for the purpose of it, then it's perhaps a chance to reconsider what your priorities are and what are you actually in the business of trying to address. Those are a few principles that we think about when it comes to selecting entrepreneurs, when it comes to thinking about our work, and when it comes to progress towards big social and environmental issues. I want to stop there. I know that we have a little bit limited time here, and so I've got about 15 minutes to kind of have a conversation, kind of have an open dialogue around whether it's a comment, it could be a question. I'm curious what people think about this idea of innovation being innovation for the sake of innovation. I'm curious about this idea of self-awareness and learning as a competitive advantage. Have you seen that in your work? And then what is the business that you're actually in? So I want to kind of open it up and have a dialogue and a conversation here, and we can kind of go from there. Then we'll go into the pitches here in a few minutes. So thanks for hearing all that. We'd love to open it up now if people have questions or comments.
Great questions.
Yeah.
I just want to comment. I think it's
Okay.
on the principle about that the 20% of your work, is the 8% most valuable. For me now, I think this is the biggest issue in my company because there are just 4 people.
Yeah.
And my everyday work is like just doing and like attending customers and I don't know, doing like things that are more a bigger emergency but not
Right.
value. And I don't know how to manage that. I think that I just employ people so I can focus more on bigger things and doing more strategy or long-term planning. And it's really hard for me now that. So I don't know how do you think is the best thing to organize? Maybe I don't know, taking every day 20 minutes, half an hour for doing little things, or how do you think this could be organized?
Yeah.
It's just a small company, which is
It's a great question. I mean, it's a good point because I think as entrepreneurs, we hustle. We work really hard. I mean, somebody asked me, so what do you do every day? And I said, I just push this big boulder up a hill. I'm just pushing this big rock up a hill. It's this brute force mentality of just execute, get it done, get it done. And I think as an organization grows, we have to move from this idea of hustle, this idea of leverage.
Yeah.
How do you move from hustle to leverage, especially if you don't have the resources and the people to do it? So I think one perhaps is a very brief self-reflection. And say at the end of the week on a Friday, what were the things that actually were the most valuable things that I did this week? And then how do I create more space to do that next week? So just a reflection on you as a leader in your venture, where are you actually contributing most to your organization? And then the other thing I guess is to consider is, what are the parts of your business that you can actually drop? What are parts that you can actually say, okay, it's not as important anymore? We have our entrepreneurs come to our accelerator program, and they have a team that they work with that they oftentimes leave behind as they come to spend time with us. And one of the best benefits that they have of coming to our accelerator program is simply that they're having to empower the team around them to take on more of the day-to-day duties of the organization. So it's hard if you don't have the staff to do that, but I'm curious, what are the parts of your business that you actually could, is it okay for you to give A+ work on these things and maybe B and C work over here? Is there a part of your business that actually you can deprioritize?
Yeah.
It's okay to drop some balls, make some mistakes.
Deprioritize not, but maybe optimize, maybe hiring better progress, customer service, is the thing that takes the most time, and it's also the most important thing of our business because our customers are the ones that are making this possible. So we have also really personalized customer service, so it's really important for us, like, email, and we have a person doing this, but it's not enough time, so I have to do two, and it's the most part of my time.
Yeah.
Basically. And also always have these problems, and I have to deal with these problems, so it's always, I think customer service is the biggest issue now.
One of the things I've heard and learned a little bit about is that if you're growing quickly and you're always having to problem solve, how do you actually push strategic goals down the org chart? What I mean by that is sometimes you'd say, okay, this person's role is to hit these metrics. Can you refashion that role in a way of saying, okay, instead of hitting these metrics, your goal is to do something more strategic. So they're taking on more leadership and ownership.
Yeah.
And you can actually step out further. It's a really difficult challenge, and yeah,
it's also a way to empower the other people around you.
That's right. How do you make each person on your team the CEO of their role? Is a question that we think about. Other people have recommendations for. Cause I'm really curious too. How do you go from a place of a culture of hustle to a culture of leverage? Any other thoughts on that? Okay. You had a question about?
Yeah, customers, I've been doing the UAE vendors for a few years, and they are trying to justify the economy, and they are creating a bunch of accelerators and incubators with public or private investors. And now I'm here, and the question is that I see the same projects everywhere. They are all thinking of the same things, the same issues in urban societies. So my feeling is that which startups are going to survive, which ones are going to go global, I mean, who's going to cannibalize who?
The question is, so much acceleration, so much entrepreneurship. We're all thinking about the same things, but which are the ones that are truly going to make a dent, truly going to create impact? Is behind that question this idea that we're focusing almost too early stage? We should focus on
Early stage.
So we're too early stage focused?
And B. And Series B. C and B.
Okay. Yeah, I think that there is a temptation, and again, it's kind of like this idea of early stage startup, innovation, entrepreneurship, and not looking at high scale potential ventures. And so I think one of the questions, at least when it comes to tackling problems, is sometimes entrepreneurship is a square peg in a round hole of it may not be the most effective problem-solving tool we have. How do we leverage public policy and government and other types of problem-solving levers that we have as a society, as organizations, to tackle problems? I do think, like, as you said, there is a startup renaissance happening all over the world, and that's really exciting because accelerators, or I guess entrepreneurs, it's a tremendous education that people have in problem solving. An entrepreneur is solving a problem with their business. Every business is addressing a problem. And if it's not addressing a problem, it's a solution looking for a problem. We see a lot of entrepreneurs that have solutions looking for problems. So they have this great idea. They come to us with a great idea, and they say, okay, this is the next big thing. And we say, what problem are you solving? Specific, and whose problem is that? And oftentimes they can't answer that question. So we push our entrepreneurs out the door and say, okay, go figure out whose problem it is. The number one reason why a startup fails is not co-founder dynamics, it's not hustle versus leverage, it's that an entrepreneur, a startup, cannot find a market for their business. There simply isn't somebody who is willing to raise their hand, pull money out of their wallet, and say, here you go, you solve my problem. Product market fit is the number one thing that an entrepreneur needs to be successful long term. But you're right, there's this renaissance happening all over the world right now. It's exciting. I think when it comes to entrepreneurship for the purpose of problem solving, we do need to look at later stage organizations that have high scale potential. Sometimes as scalability increases, the ability to solve a social problem decreases. Because the things that are most scalable are actually not holistic solutions, they're partial solutions. Apps are really scalable, but how many apps are truly solving a fundamental problem in a big social or environmental way? Many apps solve very specific narrow problems. But as you increase scalability, the problem ability to solve it may decrease. Yeah.
I would like to ask you, I'm later, I'm studying cooking labs, and one of our first trips is Finland, and Finland has a strong entrepreneurial potential, but it's also known that the company that it was the number one on the country was Nokia. When Nokia failed, and after the government with very big effort into making people go into entrepreneurship, do you think that there is not just only in Finland but worldwide kind of a bubble building around entrepreneurship?
I think there's a lot of entrepreneurship happening, and I think that if entrepreneurs, if they don't fail quickly, if they just kind of continue to sustain, there probably is a bubble that's being created. The nice thing about entrepreneurship in some ways is that the market does signal as to whether or not things are working or not. So at some point, the economic gravity of the business will collapse the business, which might pop the bubble, at least for that specific individual entrepreneur. For the case of Nokia, I mean, I think it's an example that a lot of large companies encounter, is that they eventually become irrelevant or they have missed out on specific trends, which is why I think this idea of self-awareness as a competitive advantage is truly a long-term sustainable competitive advantage. Because if Nokia would have been aware of the trends in the smartphone market, perhaps they would have been able to adapt more quickly. Just last week, Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon, said that one day Amazon will go bankrupt. And it freaked everybody out, and his shareholders, and I was like, what are you talking about? But I think he realizes that at some point every company does come, at least it wanes, it comes to an end in some capacity. So Amazon right now is growing so fast, I mean, it just seems like the whole, at least the US economy is being taken over by Amazon. But we have to be aware of the fact that companies start and they die. And the bubbles come and go as well. So I don't know if there's a bubble being created by just entrepreneurship at a global level, because I do think that so many startups fail The vast majority of startups fail within the first 5 years. So I'm not sure, but I do think that self-awareness is a key aspect of for there not being a bubble, for it to continue forward. And to scale eventually, you have to be self-aware of the changing demand, the problem that you're solving, the marketplace, competitors. It's really difficult. So that's why the 20% is so important, of like focusing on the most important dimensions of the future of your organization are key. If you focus on the day-to-day too much, you lose out. Yeah.
What is the difference between somebody that, what is the key, say, value proposition or factor of the people that work at Uncharted?
There's probably two. We hire entrepreneurs, number one, and we hire really curious learning people. So we're looking for entrepreneurs who take ownership in their work. As an organization, we're small. We're only 13 people. We can't heavily manage the people who are in our team. And so for us as an organization, we have to find people who are going to be the CEO of their role, who are going to bring a very entrepreneurial approach to whether it's being the CFO, a program director, social media, whatever it is, we need to find people who take ownership of that. So skills around entrepreneurship and having a demonstrated ability to be an owner is really important. And the second thing is learning. As an organization, we have to learn quickly. We have hypotheses that guide our work. And every single program that we run, every single month that goes by, is another chance for us to tweak and refine methodology. And so we have to continually equip our team with the skill set of a methodology that they can adapt and tweak. And so we're looking for learners. We're not looking for people who are just going to comply, who aren't curious. We're looking for people to dig and understand and ask why and peel back the layers and keep asking those questions. So if I can hire for two things, it's ownership that comes from being an entrepreneur and a super curious person. Those are the two things that we hire for.
I've got a question about investment and growth.
Yeah.
Do you think that you need necessary investment for growing? And specifically, if the startup is in the middle stage, like you already passed the early stage, you have customers, you've validated the market, and it's going well, but now you need to really grow big. Do you think at that point you need investment, or because, for example, in my case, we're working well, and we haven't had any investment until now. Well, we had an investment. Everything was from our customers, super giving us, and now you're kind of like stable.
Yeah.
Or and like every month it's the same, like same customers, and you're doing marketing strategies, but you have a big budget for doing that. So you're thinking about maybe investing and seeing what's going to happen. But we don't necessarily need it. So we don't know how to scale the company like bigger, like make it big internationally.
It's a good question. I think I would love to dive in more to understand the specifics of your venture to kind of give you a very contextualized answer as to whether it makes sense for you to take on investment or not. So for me to say with that information, yes or no, I'd probably be giving you a disservice. I do think that there is a temptation to take on investment, just kind of cultural, of like, okay, you get to a point of this stage, and then you look for investors.
But are there examples of companies that are successful without investment?
So many, yeah, a ton of companies. And I think if companies can be able to bootstrap their way to growth and scale, product market fit, it helps you focus on the 20% to 80% most value. Sometimes seeking out investors can be a tremendous distraction.
Yeah, it's like another
actually
role
growing
in the
the
company.
business. Right. So, and for you, whoever it is that actually go out, find investors, it's a lot of work to do that. So it has to be a critical necessity for you to take on investment, to undergo all that effort. And it's hard and it's slow. Oftentimes founders and CEOs say that raising investments is the most painful, difficult, lonely experience they've had as a founder and a CEO. So I'm happy to kind of dig in and talk more about your case specifically, but I think there's generally a cultural expectation of taking on investment that is perhaps not always the best fit for every company. So it's really looking at saying, what would have to be true for investment to be the right decision? What would have to be true for investment to be the wrong decision? Kind of make a column, go down that column and figure out, in your case, what's true for each, and you can kind of weigh both sides and figure out if it makes sense.
One question, Max. You were mentioning that one of the things that you address when you select entrepreneurs is their self-awareness level.
Right.
How do you measure it?
So we, in interviews with entrepreneurs, we'll criticize them. We'll have like a good cop, bad cop in interviews. We'll have 2 or 3 people in an interview,
Okay.
and we'll criticize an entrepreneur
Great.
around a vulnerability or a weakness in their business model, and we'll see how they react. So the idea is to kind of take it out of an interview format, which is generally an artificial environment, and actually kind of dig specifically into one area of their business and see if they're aware of it and see how they respond. Are they coachable? Are they self-aware? We'll also talk to references a lot. So trying to evaluate on their team, their customers, are they able to take feedback, use that feedback to shift the way they make decisions. It's a really difficult thing, and oftentimes we'll only learn about their self-awareness, how strong it is, after we work with them for a number of months or something. But we start out by kind of playing this good cop, bad cop on interviews to really evaluate how coachable are they, and then are they able to, and what other examples have they in the past demonstrated in terms of integrating feedback into their work. If you're self-aware and not coachable, if you know what's the problem but you're not willing to fix it, that doesn't get you anywhere.
Thank you.
Yes?
I feel that what you're telling us that it has something to do with humility.
With what?
Humility.
Yeah. Say more.
No, it's just humble. What do you think about it? I mean, self-awareness and humility is kind of for me, it has something to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that entrepreneurs have to balance having the vision, having the confidence of a vision that's not yet seen by other people, and also have to be tremendously humble to listen. An entrepreneur's ability to listen, to be quiet, to deeply understand who their customer is, the pain point their customer has, how their team is doing, the challenges that their team have. Oftentimes the entrepreneurs that are most successful are the ones that are humble. The ones that are least successful are ones that are tone deaf. They're not aware, they're not able to hear the noise around them. And I think you're exactly right. We as an organization tend to select humble leaders that are also courageous in the vision that they have. So the challenge is, how do you find somebody who's humble but also is courageous to take bold steps? If you can find that in the same person, it's a very powerful combination for a leader to have.
There's also, like, when you choose your startups, are you also focusing on that they have a social or environmental impact? Because I remember when I was in San Francisco 3 years ago, there were so many unuseful apps that were not solving any problems. So I think it says a lot about the entrepreneur, whether he or she is concerned about social impact or environmental impact.
Right.
So I think also it's a really important point for a startup that is going to be sustainable in the future, because if you're not socially or environmentally sustainable, then I think there's no way you can fit in the market in the future. So are you considering this too when you choose companies?
Yeah, we just select companies that have exclusively social impact or environmental impact companies.
And for those that have not this concern, don't you think that they could adapt maybe their business model to a more social one? Are you helping them also to do that? Or?
Sometimes we will. I think we work with larger brands like Fortune 500 companies as well, helping them think about their social impact strategy as it relates to entrepreneurship. Oftentimes with startups that are not social impact focused, if they're seeking investors, if they're looking to launch a business, take on investment, get acquired within 5 years' time, they are just focused on the exit. They're just focused on the money.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship, the actual value creation that's created in the business, is simply the means to an end of an exit. That's a very different mentality than entrepreneurs who are willing to create a long-term business that's committed to impact.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think a lot of the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley are looking to get exits,
Yeah.
and it's hard to force them to change their business model. Or what we'll also see for entrepreneurs that apply to our programs are entrepreneurs that are just saying they're social impact focused, just to get the types of awards or the type of recognition, but actually when you look at the business, there's not social impact there. It's just kind of painted on the side.
Now more and more, like people are more concerned about social impact, but I have the impression that successful startup is the one that is doing a big exit or the one that has the biggest investment. And I don't feel like identified with this kind of startups, but these are the most known. That's why I was asking for this.
They get the most press. There's, I think, the proportion of companies that are out there that are growing long-term value businesses that are not just in the Silicon Valley tech space probably outnumber the tech companies 5-1. We just don't hear about them. Because you hear about the big success stories of Instagram started like this, and then 3 years in they sold for $1 billion to Facebook, and those are the stories that are celebrated. Those are the heroes. Those are the entrepreneurs that become heroes, as opposed to entrepreneurs that are creating value-creating businesses. So. All right.
Okay, so
Some pitches.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, no, I don't know. So we'll start with Zero, which is the first project that will be presented by Juan Pablo.
Thank you, guys. Firstly, thank you to Juan for the inspiring presentation. I think it's cool to meet with people that inspire you and think the same idea or values in your projects. So first, Zero is this, but at the same time, it's not only this. Zero is like the best way to carry your money, and it's especially the most sustainable and ethical way. So firstly, Zero is a wallet, as you can see, and it's a wallet made from upcycled bouncy castle and parachute from the Indian Army. So we work with craftsmen in Gurgaon, near Delhi, in India. So the project starts like the first day of this year. So the main goal was how can we create like some fashion products, but at the same time fashion looking for the usability. So like Golden Spot was the first thing what like we think about, and the point was like, for example, in the Spanish market, most of the wallets are made from leather. So the project started like thinking, how can we create like a wallet without leather, but at the same time, like the usability is the same or best. So with that idea in mind, we start looking to partners in India, and I think the best thing was like to know like craftsmen in Delhi that they were using like the rest or recycled products from industry and also the army. But for me it was like bouncy castle, parachute, like they are not like the plastic bottle recycle that is more typical around the market. So we picked that. We work with them like in the same process because they made before like bags and other like fashion products. And we picked that and come here. I think it's like more of the history. But at first, I will say that right now we are facing two main issues. The first one is like in sustainability, when we are looking in all the chains, where when we pick like the materials, we transform it, we transport them to here. So we are looking to reduce like the impact of every step, especially like we are looking for the famous zero net carbon emissions. So how can we combine the emission that we generate in the transport and in the manufacturing of the products? And also we are looking like how can we transmit our message, because sustainability is at the end for the user is only one more characteristic of the product. So how can we transmit that we could be like a better options when we have like all those kind of fast fashion or high-end companies? So I think that they are the two main issues, like the kind of product market fit, as Frank said, and also how can we be more sustainable. I think that's all. Thank you for listening.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So good feedback. It's really impressive what you've done, what you've built so far. Tell me about some traction you have in terms of sales, or have been able to. Where are you in the stage of your business right now? Is it being sold here in Spain?
I think it is. Right now, we are facing the main problem that we started with the vegan market, that at least it wasn't really big enough for us, and we are like in the phase to change to the more sustainability people.
Yeah.
But we have faced that, at least in the Spanish market, it's a bit tricky to sell the product at a fair price.
Yeah.
Because right now, to sell it, we are selling under price, to the price to be like sustainable, like economically talking about.
Got it. So you can just keep it if you want. I mean, our experience when it comes to fashion companies that are looking at ethical fashion or ethical supply chain is one of them is that the company themselves, the product has to stand alone, independent of the story behind the product. So it has to be fashionable, there has to be demand for it simply from an aesthetic point of view. So I think you have that in the product already, so that's great. Sometimes you'll see products that are maybe can't stand alone from a fashion perspective by themselves. They need the story to make the sale. I think the reality is that you have built a product that actually has the ability to stand alone as a fashionable wallet purchase. The key then, I think, is around differentiation. Is how do you differentiate in the marketplace here in Spain or elsewhere from other wallets? And so I think one question is differentiation. The other question is distribution in terms of are you selling it online? Are you selling it through wholesale? But I think you have a compelling story, you have a strong product. Now the question becomes distribution and differentiation.
Yeah, right now our main channel is our online commerce that like in less than half a year is like the third e-commerce, like the process of the what we need. But we are starting working a lot with local shops, firstly in Barcelona and also here in Madrid. So that is working better, but we also are having like the issue of the price and the structure of cost of all the process.
What are you retailing it for? How much does it cost?
Sorry?
How much does it cost? What is the price of one wallet?
It depends about mainly with the shipping cost.
Yeah.
Because here we are working with a social company that it's called Koiki, and the last mile is made with bicycles or electrical vehicles.
I see.
So it increases the cost to get to the final customer about like 10 euros.
I see.
So it's a bit tricky because like with our like size as a company, negotiation with the final the shops, our margins go really small.
Yeah, sure. Got it. So that's because people are buying it online and it gets shipped to them in a zero waste way. Is that right?
Yeah, that is one of the first steps that we are really agree with that kind of shipping because we think that all the process, all the chains should be as sustainable.
Yeah.
But also it's a bit tricky because it will be much cheaper to send directly with another shipping company with a plastic bag, better on full recycled paper made.
Right.
Yeah, it's like the kind of the cost, and I think the main problem is like how do you transmit to the final user that you cannot couldn't be as cheaper as a Sarah wallet or something like that.
Right. Yeah, it makes it hard. I mean, I think the net carbon emissions is a really ambitious objective to have and a very admirable one. So I think it's a big step to have the entire production, supply chain, distribution, all of that be zero emissions, which I think is awesome. I think the question then becomes, can you, from a margins perspective, do you have a business on your hands in terms of breaking even? And can you charge the premium price to actually have people to cover all of your costs?
Right now, no. Yeah, being trust. But the main ways right now would be at first not trying to look to the zero net carbon emissions.
Yeah.
That would be a bit tricky for us as a team. And also the second plan would be more to focus in broad markets. So maybe will be more price. The price will be much better than the price necessary for all kind of studies and the process of the.
Sure. I mean, I would push you and encourage you to see if you can find a price point and some type of product market fit where you're actually able to generate revenue that covers, you have a margin that keeps you in business. And so like, the long-term viability of your venture is going to be dependent upon, can you get to a price point in a target market that you'll be able to at some point break even on. And so I would really push to evaluate that unknown right now and test and experiment on that unknown, because that seems to be one of the 20% that's 80% most valuable for the long-term part of your business would be around the product market fit at a certain price point. And push it up there and see if you can actually get at that price point and see what the market will bear.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's the point, and that's the thing we are working on now to meet.
Great work, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, very rapidly now, Jesus Novillo from Aedra, third year name. Thank you, right? Hello? Okay. Very formal, and I'm just going to put a presentation here. In the meantime, I would like to show you some of the units.
Cool.
You guys can pass over next person. Yeah. As you can see, if you had already these notebooks in your hand, they have a special touch. They are softer. And they are different. They are paper, but they are not quite exactly paper. We have these models right here. You might see them on the website and you would think, well, this is just regular notebooks. It's nothing special about them. But in fact, there is something quite remarkable about them. One of the features that it has is that you can put water on them. No matter the quantity, the amount of water you put on them, they will still remain the same. So you can use it on a water environment. But this is not, of course, the most remarkable thing. What is remarkable is how they are made of. They are made of a special paper called stone paper, which has a crowd-to-crowd silver certification. This means that this project is into what is called a circular economy. We want to solve one of the SDGs, the SDG number 6 about water. With one single notebook from AEDA, you're saving up to 400 liters of water. And I think that this is the most remarkable thing here. Basically what we did, we began 1 year ago. We are on pre-seed stage, so very early. We're still trying to figure out the ways to reach the market. But this is somehow, as you said before, like sometimes we're bringing the solution before, in fact, having a look at the problem. We found out this solution, but we thought that this also was a very big problem, the issue with the water worldwide. So basically, we did here, it's called entrepreneurship. We teamed up with a bunch of designers. So totally in our website, we have 24 designers. And they are making designs for us, and we're collaborating with them. So each design has a different topic, according to what you can see here. And through them, we are expanding our network, so we are reaching more people to get to know. This is basically the process that our notebooks are made of. We buy the stock paper in Taiwan, they ship it over to Spain, then we print those covers, the artists make them, we print them, then, as you see here, we save 400 liters of water. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Super impressive. Tell me about stage and traction right now.
Sorry?
Tell me about your stage, your traction right now. How many are you selling on an annual basis?
All right.
What are your distribution channels?
Okay, well,
margins?
Our main distribution channel, it's our website.
Yep.
We're selling through the website, we have an e-commerce. We are also selling in some shops, and we are trying to have some chat with other companies in order to distribute them in other areas we can't reach. But this is getting more difficult, this particular thing. Mainly, as I said, our e-commerce, and when we're doing things like this, like we're gathering with other people, we team up with others, collaborate. Basically, that's when it creates bigger growth.
Got it.
And,
yeah, it does. And how many are you selling on an annual basis?
On an annual basis, right now,
How many units?
well, we don't have numbers for the whole year, but I can tell you these last 2 months we sold around like 500 units of those, including some companies they asked like maybe 200 units, something like that.
Okay. And in terms of, I'm trying to understand kind of like the biggest challenge in your business right now. Is it on, if you had a purchase order for 10,000 journals, do you have the supply chain in place to deliver that quantity?
Well, that's a very good question. In fact, we don't. That's something that could be a good challenge. But our main challenge right now is that the cover, those are not made with stone paper, only the cover, the inside, yes. Problem is that the cost of printing stone paper is too high. Right now, those are made in recycled paper. Still keeps the I don't know how to say in English, but you can put water on them, and it will fall apart. That's not how.
Okay. So there's if you did get a major order for say 10,000, how would you fulfill that? What would be the process to do that in terms of the supply chain from Taiwan to here?
That's a good question. Well, basically, I think that first of all, we would have to figure out who would be able to print, you know, all those 10,000 units, because it's a very special paper, it's special machines to use it, and also we would have to figure out the way to get all that big amount of stone paper coming here.
Right.
Yeah.
What are your plans for growth?
Well, basically, right now we are trying to get to sell more units on our website. That's how our main plan. That's why we are focused right now on this year.
Okay.
And that's mainly it.
So primarily B2C online sales.
What's it?
Online sales to a consumer, to an individual consumer.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That and plus also selling to the companies, right? Like most companies right now through the social department, like the social responsibility and sustainable department.
Right.
We are trying to, you know, let them know that we're here, right? Like we're trying to increase the awareness into our products, you know, with these companies.
I mean, it's an awesome product. I love the impact of 400 liters of water saved. That's a really good metric. I think you have a really good story, a really good product. I think maybe the question is selling specifically to individual consumers versus or selling also to these corporations. You probably could also sell to conferences quite easily as well. Social impact conferences, you get those bags at a conference where they have stuff like this in a bag, but then you have 2,000 people at a conference. If you can sell at that quantity, and that gets back to my question on production of if you get a big order, how would you fulfill it? But I think I might begin to look more at bulk orders and understand the types of customers that would be able to place bulk orders and then improve the supply chain to get there. What's the margin on it?
The margin right now, it's hard to tell.
You don't have, if it's confidential.
We didn't have it, I mean, we didn't have it,
Okay.
We have it measured, but right now I cannot tell you the certain amount.
Got it. Something to know what your margins are in terms of
Percentage, I can tell you it's
breaking
around
even.
15 to 20%.
Okay,
That's
got it.
something like that.
That way you can begin to understand if you're selling in bulk, then what kind of margin can you do in bulk versus if you're selling on a one-off basis. So these seem awesome. I think you probably could almost increase the price. Maybe test out different price points as well and see if 8.5 euros is it 8.5 euros?
Yeah, that's right. 8.5.
You might be able to sell it for more. I could see this selling for more.
All right.
Increase your margin. Yeah. Other. I mean, I don't want to be the only one that's providing feedback. So other people who have feedback or comments for.
Right. So we've been following the project for a year now because you're in the community. My two main questions is you've gotten a lot of feedback that you should raise the price that you have, and you haven't. And the other one is that you've been suggested a lot of times that you should open up more products inside, say, category of books or notebooks, and you haven't. Is that a strategy decision, or how does that work?
That's a very good question, John. You made it. In fact, it's an internal issue, that we have been discussing a lot. That's something that we, some of us, we are 4 people probably, but some of us we want to raise the price, some others don't. We are really not arriving to a common point. So the common ground between raising the price and getting it lower, it's 8.50, which is something that we would definitely have to talk about it again. But that's something that we know that, and we are aware that we should change it because it's true that it's quite low.
And the diversification.
Yeah.
Yeah, diversification. That's something that's a goal that we have also for this year. Sorry, that's something I didn't say. Yeah, we would like to also launch other products that complement notebook. We were thinking about some pens that you can those are 100% compostable. So we keep still the circular economy. We want to do that.
Got it.
Are you planning on making them bigger?
Yes, indeed, we are doing them thicker. We have other versions, like Sarah right there, she has one. This one's thicker. You can see it there. We just released this new model like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. We want them learning battery size.
Definitely we can get those. Yes.
I think there could be a nursing way. I mean, when it comes to internal debating, our team does a lot of internal debating as well on certain strategic decisions. And I guess oftentimes it just becomes a question of guessing versus learning. So for us, when we get into this point of we get into an internal debate, oftentimes we're just kind of guessing about what might happen in the future, as opposed to designing a very small experiment and begin to learn from that experiment about what the outcomes are. So when it comes to pricing, I imagine you could design a couple of experiments of pricing at different price levels and kind of test the market and see at what point are you seeing sales revenue drop. There could be a way that's more data-driven to really get to a specific answer on pricing than simply kind of internal debate. So just a thought.
You mean like a kind of an A/B test, something like that?
Yeah. So how do you go from a place of guessing to a place of learning and getting feedback? Oftentimes it can be through a small pilot or a prototype, an A/B test. But if you find yourself kind of in an internal debate where there's a lot of different opinions, put it out to the market. Let the market is the best mentor in some ways and the best decider. And so put it to the market and get their feedback for it. I mean, I don't know, people in this room, would you pay more than $850 for this?
Yes.
Raise your hand. Would you pay 10?
Yeah.
Would you pay 12?
Yes.
So something, I mean, like we could spend 10 minutes in this room over the next 10 minutes. We'll get to a price point where all of a sudden people are not raising their hands anymore. And then we toggle back, and then we say, okay, let's actually begin to see who's going to pay for this at 12, who's going to pull out their wallet. But you can do simple tests that will help you get to a definitive answer on this. You can do it quite quickly. So super cool.
And it's nice to do it before telling it's 850. You do it with people before telling the price you put this thing in, because before I knew the price, I would say, oh, this costs 15 euros. I thought myself, and I wanted to buy today for 15. So don't tell the price and then make the question. Especially now for Christmas.
Definitely. Wow. I think that this is very good feedback. No, we really should use it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last project is Non-Stop Biotech. We have here co-founder and CEO Enrique Cat, that was part of the first promotion of Lane in Madrid. Welcome back.
Hi everyone, my name is Enrique. I founded this company while studying Lane between second and third course. And basically the main problem that we are trying to address is the excessive amount of chemical fertilizers and pesticides that are riding crops, and that ultimately we are eating together with apples, oranges, tomatoes, whatever we eat. We are also eating chemical residues. So we thought about how can we solve this, and we thought about microbes. You know, I always put the analogy of the human body. You know, in our body we have 10 times more bacteria cells than human cells, human being cells. And without these bacteria cells inside our digestive system and above, not above, on the surface of our skin, we would not even survive. I mean, we could not digest the food, and basically we could not survive. And the same happens with a plant or with a crop. Without some beneficial microbes that lives in the soil and in the leaves, the plants could not survive. They cannot take nutrients and defend against pests and diseases. And what happens with chemical pesticides? We have this issue that we are eating chemical residues, but there's another big issue that when you apply these chemical compounds to the soil, you are also killing those beneficial microbes. So it's a two-way problem. And our solution, or the solution that we suggested to the market is, okay, let's substitute the chemical pesticide and use or substitute with beneficial microbes. So we grow beneficial fungus and beneficial bacteria, and we put it strategically in strategic moments and strategic places in the crops, trying to prevent or cure diseases and trying to increase the amount of nutrients, meaning nitrogen, phosphorus, whatever nutrients through the soil, through the roots. And that's what we have been doing for 3 years. Here's an example. This worm causes losses of around 1,000 million euros only in Spain. It infects the roots, and here you are seeing how a fungus is killing the nematode. So it's a 1,000 million euros problem being solved by a fungus. So when I saw this video, I realized, okay, we can make a business out of this thing. And in fact, we are selling this fungus with quite big success. And these are our figures since we started in terms of sales. 2018 is not updated. We are going to reach only near 800,000, or maybe a little bit less, I'm not sure. And for 2019, our objective is going to be less. But we have done very good progress. And right now we are facing some issues that are stopping us to grow. Basically, we need to create a new manufacturing facility closer to where our clients are, which is Almeria, in southeast of Spain. And we also have to make some investments to deliver a better service to the clients. And we have also to invest strongly on marketing. So, and that's the reason we are looking for some investment. And the reason maybe I came here because I know that we are in contact with some venture capitalists or funds, social impact funds. We are also in contact with the main players in Spain, but we are open to talk with whoever you know. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, also really impressed. It's super cool to see the progress that you have. I think a really good articulation of the problem. It sounds like you're able to sell. I'm curious about the specific value proposition that you are selling to farmers. Is it farmers that you're selling to? Is it increased yield? Is it revenue? I mean, I'm sure they can look at that video and they say, that's great, but actually what I care about is there's risk in farming, and I want to make sure that when I can harvest my crops, I get the price I want. How would you articulate the specific pain point that you're solving for farmers?
Okay. It's a little bit complex, but in short, it goes like this. In Almeria, the southeast area in Spain, produces most of the food that is eaten in the north of Europe because of the climate conditions and everything. So consumers, people in Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, whatever, they are concerned about this chemical. They are demanding organic production, or at least healthy food. And so the buyer, let's say Carrefour, Aldi, the big supermarket chains that control the food market, they are pressing the producers, it means these Almeria growers, to deliver food with a maximum of 3 to 4 chemical residues. I don't know if I'm putting it right, but the thing is that the farmer has a constraint. In the recent years, they can only apply 3 to 4, maximum 4 chemical pesticides in their own crops. And they face a lot of pests and diseases. But if they apply 5, their client will reject the order. So they need alternative solutions. Yeah, it's a bit more complex, but that's one.
Makes sense. I think when it comes to talking to investors, a couple of things. They're going to want to see the total addressable market. They're going to want to see how big of an opportunity this is. If you're looking to scale and you're showing on the graph that you're basically able to more than double your revenues in 2019 from 2018, what is your level of confidence that you can do that, and how do you plan to do that? So I think having answers to those questions will be important for investors, so you can say, look, here's the size of the market, here's the opportunity, here's the pain point that we're solving for, and all we need is investments in X, Y, and Z to get us to bridge to this future of 2.8 million revenue, 2.8 million euros of revenue a year. So I think you have a really good articulation of the science, a really good articulation of the problem. Focusing more on the market size and opportunity will be an important piece when talking to investors about how their investment can get you to the next level. So that's something, just one piece that I would say. And then I imagine in a follow-up conversation, having really sound financials in terms of explaining to them your margins, your target customer, specifically the type of farmer that, what are the crops. I think you have, it's obviously like, it's a bit complicated in the sense of the work that you're doing. Biotech is a word that is a bit jargony at points. So how do you kind of get out of the expert that you are and make it really simple for specific people? One thing that we talk about to our entrepreneurs is explain your business to a 10-year-old child to make it super clear and simple. And so I think you can say, look, like, we are providing this fertilizer and pesticide, which helps these farmers sell to these buyers in Northern Europe and help them reach that market. And then kind of go beyond that, but I think distilling it down to very specific language can be a really helpful way to get past some of the complexity of it and show the tremendous market opportunity that exists. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
Other feedback from other folks?
I have a question. Do you usually speak directly to the crop producers, or are you also focusing on those trigger pressure communities? I mean, the supermarkets and those, like the intermediates. the ones who are pressuring, in fact, the crop
We're going
producers?
directly with to the farmers or agricultures or associations of farmers. But yeah, we are not doing the commercialization through the other way, which would be the supermarkets. We are going to the growers.
And have you thought about that, or you have just deleted that idea?
Yes, we have thought about that. The thing is that you know, it's super complex to deal with those huge organizations. You could that easily die while in meetings with them, and it's easier to go to the farmers and make a value proposition and sell it.
And what about the public, the last ultimate people like being affected about the best positive issues that non-stop will make them recover? I mean, if I am the public and I know I'm going to get to a specific supermarket and I know that these type of products have been related to non-stop, and that means that I will be eating something more healthy than any other one else. Are you tracking those publics?
No, I mean it's a good idea, and we thought about having our own supermarket, you know, building not a supermarket, but it's just a crazy idea that we cannot afford nowadays. But it would make sense that you enter in a supermarket and you have like the guarantee that everything that is inside there is healthy because the brand assures you, because you trust in the brand, and then you trust that everything is inside there is healthy. But nowadays it's impossible. We know, I mean, I have found the products from our clients in the Carrefour that I buy every week. But it's impossible to tell if specifically this fruit has been, has received our products or not, because distribution chain is so complex. Yeah.
Would it be possible to create like a
Label.
like a label, like the queue for quality in the hotels?
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
We also have thought about that. It's a good idea, but again, it's like from all the ideas that you have to pick some of them, and yeah.
And one question, Enrique, have you approached the customer of the customers to increase the potential demand or the will of your customer in terms of when you approach Carrefour and you say, hey, because, for example, if you have an industrial investor, because I assume that if you want to build new way to produce, you want to invest in marketing, sales, then you need resources for that. So you are looking for money. Maybe a way of smart money can be you go to a Carrefour and you say, hey, if you invest in this project, it's a way also to perceive as Carrefour or another example can be the customer of your customer. It can be a way to really enhance the customer relationship with your customers, because you are saying, hey, Carrefour is believing in this project, Carrefour is your customer, so it's better you buy Master, maybe have a product, right? So have you tried that?
No, we haven't. We have thought about that, we haven't. And maybe that is one of the things that we should do, because these things are so powerful. I mean, if Carrefour says to these cooperatives, because in the end the farmers, they sell the products to cooperatives. I mean, it's not that they sell, they belong to cooperatives, and they bring the products to the cooperatives, and then the cooperatives negotiate a price with Carrefour. So if Carrefour says, okay, use this product, then I mean, it's like the business will scale up. My thought on this is that Carrefour is going to say, I do have supermarkets and I'm in the supermarket business and I don't care about fertilizers. You do have your own business, because companies like ours doing organic fertilizers, there are so many. And if you put yourself in the position of Carrefour, if they have to attend and listen and act on all the organic fertilizers produced, it's another
But
business.
it is going back to the idea in more conceptual way. It's not maybe that Carrefour is the one investing, but if you go to Carrefour in order to, I don't know, maybe there is another agent in that approach that is, okay, because you were saying, part of the storytelling is people in the north, they want to have organic food, and they want to have evidence that this food they are buying is good quality food. So probably there is lobbies, there is consumer organizations that you can deal with, and you go with that info and that will to Carrefour, and you say, hey, actually I'm one of the, I can be I can support, or I can be, let's say, a warranty that through me that food will respect these populations, this will that the consumers want. So maybe it's not asking for money to Carrefour, but it's how you can involve Carrefour in order to make a strength to your customers, so they will have more, and a very important reason to work with you.
Yeah.
Because it's actually like the same happened with Coca-Cola in Spain. Like there was some companies that were like embotelladoras de Coca-Cola, and they are not providing value at all. Their market is determined by the amount of Coca-Colas that are sold. So in this case, they're saying that Carrefour has the final customer, so the market for your customers is determined by the amount of, in this case, fruits or vegetables that are sold. So the problem of Carrefour or the challenge is to sell more. If the market wants to increase the quality, is how can you help Carrefour to guarantee that? And actually you are providing more value than the embotelladoras, which in this case are the ones, the farmers. So actually this can be something interesting to take into account, like to close the cycle in terms of value.
One thing that we are trying to do in Namibia is creating like similar space like Labs or like the Impact Hub. We took the idea of, because I was in the Impact Hub first year of playing and I really enjoyed it. And we took the idea of the Impact Hub and we are trying to build an agriculture hub in Namibia and to create events like this event on a weekly basis. So in these events we could invite Carrefour. And if you put together like 20 important farmers and one guy from Carrefour comes and speaks and I go and I make a speech on how good our products are, and you know that could be a way to do what you were suggesting, you know, like maybe Carrefour is not a direct investor, but we could make some kind of co-branding with them and use their power if we are able to create this community or this space, this hub spirit in an area which is completely new, no? We are in Madrid and Barcelona, we are used to what a co-working is, community building is, but in an area that they have never heard about that. And so we could be pioneers in that aspect, and in those events, or in those events, try to involve all the agents, so the farmer perceives that working with us is helpful. In fact, all of our marketing strategy is based on that idea, on creating knowledge and delivering knowledge to the farmers through our innovation or agriculture hub. And that's why we need money. We need money for a space, to make some, for content creation, managers of the space, advertising of the events, production of the events. But all marketing strategy is aligned with this idea, that in fact is what you were suggesting.
Happy to be helpful if you want more thoughts on investor stuff. So.
My question it would be if international investors would be interested on investing in these kind of companies, or because I'm not very it's not that I'm not interested, but I really have focused on being in the day-to-day, in the daily basis of the company. I travel on a monthly basis to Almeria, and going abroad for 2-3 months. And most of the American investors, they want you to establish an American company, to operate there and to sell there, and we have clearly in mind that we want to stay here until sales reach a certain level, and then we will think about going abroad. But So I don't think if there is a real possibility of having an American investor.
I think there's some American investors who won't force you to establish a U.S. entity who will, I mean, they will see Spain as a stable market to invest in, you as a good entrepreneur, and might be willing, for the right investor, might be willing to invest in you. I also would just ask, what about other investors across Europe that might be a good fit that are not just in Spain? I imagine you could probably be capitalized by European investors specifically too.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to reach them. I'm in contact with some of them.
But I don't think it's required that you spend 3 months away, that I imagine there are investors out there who would be willing to support your existing operations here in Spain.
Okay.
We are in a small group already. It doesn't make sense to take the mic, so thank you very much. Thanks to being here. It was amazing. Let's try to arrange this at least once a year.
Sounds great.
We are very in contact, so maybe we can network a little bit. Well, tomorrow you are flying early in the morning, but maybe there is a place for enjoying a beer or something like that now. So.
And happy to get on my card. You all can reach out anytime with any questions or anything, and any resources that you have. I'm happy to share.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.